Next, we're going to look at the difference between degrees and radians. This is a new concept for us, so I'm going to do the best that I can to try and explain what a radian is. A radian is another way to measure angles, and it actually sounds like what it means. A radian comes from the idea of a radius. We can measure angle measures based off of the radius of a circle. So to bring in this idea, I'm going to use this GeoGebra to kind of help us. Okay, so as I spin, notice that the radius of this thing is 1. Okay, and each one of these blue lines is going to come up and measure the circumference of the circle, essentially. So as I move this, we're saying that the angle measure now is 1 radian. Right in here, this is 1 radian right now because I'm measuring that angle with 1 radius. I'm going to keep on going. I want you to see how interesting and cool this is. Now I have 2 radians, or 2 radius, 2 radii, whatever you want to call it. Okay, go one more. This would be 3. Just a little bit farther. There's 3 radians. And if I go and get halfway, I want you to notice what my angle measure is here. We would say that this is 180 degrees. That's what we're used to. But if I look at this in terms of radians, it's really, really, really close to pi. I had to round it a little bit, but this is really close to an angle measure of pi radians on here. So we would say that pi, I got to go back to my other slide. We would actually say that pi radians is the same thing as 180 degrees. Okay, that's a very important concept that we need to understand. Pi is the same thing as 180 degrees, pi radians. Which means then if I go all the way, I doubled it. 3.14 times 2 is the same thing as 6.28. So really, pi times 2, or 2 pi, is the same thing as 360 degrees, which is what we have here as well. We're just going to convert between the two right now. I'm only going to ask you to convert between radians and degrees. And the one that we're going to use is this one, because this is just a simplified version of 2 pi equaling 360. Right, so you're either going to have to multiply by pi radians over 180 or 180 over pi. We basically say that those two things are exactly the same thing. So we're going to multiply by 1, kind of. Okay, so looking at this, I want to rewrite the degree measures in radians, and I want to write the radian measures in degrees. So looking at letter A, the negative is just there to throw you off. If I want to get this is in degrees. I want you to see the difference right now. This one's in degrees. This one is in radians. And I want you to notice which each one has. This one, the letter A, the one in degrees, does not have pi in terms of the answer. Letter B does. All right, so I want to get letter A to look something like letter B. So I'm going to take negative 30 times pi over 180, which is going to get me negative 30 pi over 180. And then I can simplify. Negative 30 over 180 comes out to negative pi over 6 radians. So we would say that negative 30 is the same thing as negative pi over 6 radians. For letter B, I want to go from radians to degrees. So now we're going to say I have 5 pi over 2. I want to get rid of pi, so this time I'm going to multiply by 180 over pi. The nice thing is that my pi's cancel. Now it's like I have 5 halves times 180. If I take 5 halves times 180, that's going to get me 450 degrees. We would say that 5 pi over 2 is the same thing as 450 degrees. I'll do a couple more with you. For A, I want to get 120 into radians. So 120 times pi over 180. 120 over 180. That simplifies to 2/3. So we would say we have 2 pi over 3. Next, for 4b, we have negative 3 pi over 8. We're going to take that times 180 over pi. Again, your pi's cancel. Negative 3/8 times 180. You'll get a decimal. That's okay. You'll get negative 67.5 degrees.